It is time for my favorite fairies, and if you even so much as suggest that it's Tinkerbell, you will lose the hand.
You're like no fun.
Yeah, well, deal with it. Lose the hand. Welcome to our review of The Darkest Part of the Forest.
There have been many books where fairies are just magical people who live in magical worlds where fantastic things happen. A lot of Midsummer Night's Dream and not that much Tam Lin. That being said, Holly Black's modern fairy tales don't stint on the folklore, like the rocks with the holes in the middle so you can find missing things, or carrying oatmeal in your pockets as protection, or even wearing your socks inside out to confuse the fairies.
You are never allowed to forget that fairies are other with a giant capital O. They may look pretty, they may talk pretty, they may run on their own set of manners and courtesy, but on the inside, they are about as likely to make a necklace out of your thumb bones as they are to give you the time of day.
This book joins her three others, Tithe, Valiant, and Ironside. 3 books that we would recommend you read because they are absolutely awesome. But they are by no means required to be read before you read this book. You can easily read The Darkest Part of the Forest and not realize that there are other books that do relate to them. That being said, there are a few conversations that kind of hint at stuff that happened in Tithe, but it's pretty obscure.
Our story begins in your typical small town with a tourist season that keeps them afloat. But they have something way better than the world's biggest fork or the world's biggest ball of yarn. They have fairies. And of course the tourists don't really believe in the fairies, but, you know, they've seen the horned boy in the casket in the middle of the forest, but, you know, he's probably not real.
Dude, want to take a selfie with the horned boy?
Yeah! Bad things happen to tourists sometimes. They'll go missing, they'll wind up dead, sometimes they just turn up years later, but the townsfolk are generally safe, and if something bad does happen to the townsfolk, they were probably just acting like tourists.
Even worse than your usual run-of-the-mill trolls, hobs, hags, and redcaps, there is a monster that haunts the heart of the forest. A monster that with one side of it will drive you crazy, and even the fairies are kind of afraid of it. A monster called Sorrow.
Our guide to this twisted world is Hazel, who lives your more or less stereotypical small town life, going to parties, getting drunk, kissing all the boys. But Hazel has a lot of secrets that she's trying to keep down, and generally just away from her brother.
But Ben has problems of his own. He was blessed as a child by a fairy with the power of music. He can make you feel intense joy, grief, sorrow, regret, or, you know, just put you into a trance with a rousing rendition of something on the spoons, if he feels like it. But his powers have scared the crap out of him, so much so that he actually smashed his hands in a door and then didn't let them heal properly so he wouldn't be able to hurt anyone.
He and Hazel used to go on crusades against the fairies. Ben would play his music to keep the fairies entranced, and then Hazel would kill them with a sword. And they did this until Ben realized how dangerous what they were doing really was, so he called a halt to the hunting. Hazel, of course, was not very happy about this, and she still harbors dreams of saving the town and hunting down fairies.
She made a bargain with the local fairy bossman, the Elder King, that she would give up 7 years of her life in exchange for a musical scholarship for Ben in hopes that if he learned how to control his magic, the hunt could continue.
So Hazel has been a little freaked out by weird shit, well, weirder shit than usual anyways, that have been going down. First, somebody's been leaving her cryptic notes in a walnut. Weird. But then she wakes up with mud all over her, glass in her palms, and the town is abuzz with the news that somebody has sprung and woken up the horned boy.
The plot of The Darkest Part of the Forest is extremely tight and clever, just like we've come to expect from Holly Black. There are a lot of hints and clues and foreshadows scattered throughout the book, but they're so subtle that you don't really realize it until the very end when you can put it all together. The story just feels extremely natural. And of course, there are the really, really crazy metaphors that Holly Black is famous for. "Hey, Hazel," he called softly into the upstairs hall, and she turned. "What did he kiss like?" She snorted a surprised laugh. Her bad mood was dissolving. "Like he was a shark. And I was blood in the water." Her characters are subtle too, and occasionally a little too subtle, like in the case of the horned boy Severin. But everyone's backstories are interesting and memorable and solid. Hazel doesn't have the most flamboyant personality, but she does have a quiet strength to her that doesn't rob her of her humanity, which seems to be a difficult find in the teen section these days.
Hazel's brother Ben loves love. He wants fireworks and magic, and he's very much in love with the idea of the horned boy Severin, who is actually also the Elder King's son. Hazel and Ben's relationship, though, is a little dysfunctional, as in, let me not tell you all the important things that you should probably know because I want to protect you. Kale smoothie.
And then there's their best friend Jack, who has secrets of his own. He was a changeling who was raised with the boy he was supposed to be traded for, and he's having a hard time balancing his life as a human and his life as a fairy. And as things in town get worse, people are starting to blame him for the trouble.
Holly Black does human psychology so well, and the town's collective mindset is part of the creep factor that is the atmosphere in this book. They delude themselves into thinking that they're safe even when Sorrow actually attacks the school, and as more and more people get hurt, they have a harder and harder time denying that things have gone wrong. So they point to the nearest thing that they can find and go, there, that's it, that is the problem.
Clearly, this is the source of all of our problems. This is why my glasses were run over.
This is why my Wi-Fi is not working. The other half of the creep factor comes from the imagery. People coughing up dirt when Sorrow gets too close, fairies' faces suddenly changing from human to other, corpses buzzing with flies, and eyes green like poison. You won't find a lot of description in these books, but that's just how good it is that you come out with these images in your head. It's just the same.
You may have read about fairies before, but you haven't read them the way Holly Black does them. This book fits in perfectly with her other modern fairy tales.
And if you haven't read the other modern fairy tales, go read those too.